Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and this is one of Miguron Knives, budget knives. Now, these things are extremely affordable, and I apologize for my hands right off the bat. I work with them, guys. I'm sorry, but let's get into this knife. So we have a drop point blade in DC53 Steel. We'll get more into the steel here in a second. G10, that is very, very well done. I do really like the way they did this G10. The finishing on it is very nice. It has a nice look to it, too. Then we have some gold steel liners that are heavily milled out and a titanium pocket clip. T8 construction all the way around. I do really like that. I don't like to see T6s. We have a couple T6s on the clip. No big deal there, but the body screws are all T8. Now the DC53 drop point blade is crowned on the spine, which is really nice to see, especially for this budget. And you see we have a nice swedge going down to the tip to add to a little bit of strength behind the tip while still keeping it nice and acute. Let's talk about the ergos before we talk about the cutting and then the action. So the ergos are really, really nice. I mean, it's a neutral grip, so it is a straightforward knife. If you're the type of person that really likes a finger guard, then this might not be your style. I personally like this style, as I like being able to get up nice and close to the blade when I want to. I don't really worry about slipping up the blade too much. You know, I have hands, so I just squeeze and no issues, but the handle does have a little bit of a taper to it. As you can see, it tapers down from thicker to thinner, but not so much to where you don't get the leverage in your pinky that you want to squeeze into your palm. Very, very comfortable in the hand. I feel the clip a tiny bit, but nothing to really complain about. I have a lot of leverage into the cuts because the spine of the handle, you know, this is kind of contoured, as you can see. So my hands wrap around it really nicely, and then the flat part of the spine really pushes into my palm very nicely when I'm cutting. So slicing and cutting with this, the geometry is pretty decent. It's not super thin behind the edge. It's not thick. It's right where it should be at, I guess, for this size of a knife. We got about 18 thousandths behind the edge. However, the angle of the edge bevel is a little high, so after reprofiling, I'm going to say it's going to be about 20 thousandths behind the edge, because they did put a pretty high edge angle on there. Now, I do wish they would have done a little bit better edge. I wasn't too impressed with the edge. Now, I have not resharpened it yet. I just haven't had time. I sharpened up the other one. The steel felt great on the other one. Sharpened up really good. I was pretty impressed with the steel. DC53 seems to sharpen up really good. Takes an incredibly sharp edge. Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be basically like a harder version of D2. That's what I've read about it. So I am confused about a couple things with the DC53 Steel. Now, remember, this is my first experiences with it, but reading about it, it says that, it has a lot better upgrades over D2. It has twice the toughness, better wear resistance and all that, but it says that it has the potential of being between 62 and 64 HRC. But when I read about this knife, it says that it's heat treated at 58 to 60 HRC. So I'm kind of confused why they wouldn't take it to its highest potential, between 62 and 64 HRC, unless if maybe they have issues with it that hard in a knife steel. I don't know. Maybe that's just its potential, and maybe as a knife steel, it shouldn't be. I don't know. It's hard to say. But that was one thing I was a little confused about, because that it's saying it's, has good potential of being harder at 62 to 64, yet they're doing it between 58 and 60. So I don't know, and I don't know how great the edge retention is or anything like that. I've only had the little experience I've had with it. Sharpening it, it feels really good. It feels really good on the stone. It takes a really good edge. Only time will tell, really, with after really testing it and seeing how good the edge holds up. I didn't do a controlled test or anything like that. So, I can't speak on how well the edge holds up at the HRC that they are, bringing it to. D2 doesn't tend to take as good of a polish as the DC53 seems to take. This stuff seems to take a really good polish or a good toothy finish. Now, D2, regular D2, really likes a medium grit edge, which this does too. However, this can go up to a little bit more of a polish. Now, most likely, right when you get it, you're going to want to resharpen it and put a lower angle on it, you know, probably between 17 and 18 degrees or something like that. That will definitely massively improve the cutting performance of this knife, because that was one of the downfalls, and we'll get into some of the bad here in a second, but cutting performance is good. You know, it passes through materials just fine. It's not really an issue. Most of it was from the edge that I had an issue with any tearing or anything like that, but it had nothing to do with the geometry. The geometry is okay. It's not too thick. It's nothing I would complain about, and it cuts just fine. And the leverage you get into the cuts is really nicely too. Then the tip, you know, it does have a nice drop point blade, so doing utility cuts is going to be awesome with this thing. It's going to do great utility cuts, and the fact that your handle doesn't force you into any grip, you're going to easily be able to just go right to a utility cut without even thinking about it, which is one reason why I really like neutral grips or ergos. Now, looking at the blade a little closer, we see we have a PVD coating. Now, yes, the PVD coating is going to start wearing over time. It's just the nature of the beast. That will all kind of even out, but you can kind of expect with any coated blade, you're going to get some wear. Now, going into the action, this is a front flipper, as you can see, and I really like the jimping. I like how they went all the way around the top of the flipper tab. They didn't stop it right here. They went all the way up and around. So the flipping action is amazing. It's really good. Not a very strong detent, but you don't want a very strong detent with any front flipper. Front flipping action does not work well with a very strong detent. In my opinion, you want it a little bit on the lighter side, which in this case, it's very, very good. And when it breaks, I mean, it snaps right open because of how smooth it is. Very easy to do the reach around with your pointer finger here. I mean, just incredibly easy to front flip this knife, and it is stupid smooth on the drop. Now, when we unlock it, the detent is not early, but it doesn't have a flipper tab in the way, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. Now, the access to the lock bar is not great. I can get to it just fine, mostly because the liner is very soft and very easy to disengage, but they didn't leave you any access right here to go from the side. So that is a thing, but it still works very well. Most people probably won't even complain about that just because of how easy it is to unlock, meaning the pressure of the lock bar is pretty soft. So, but even though it does have a soft lock bar, it's locked up very, very solid. So I haven't gotten any flex out of it or anything like that. I haven't spine whacked it, but just doing the old, squeeze test and checking it, it feels very, very solid. So the clip and carry. So it does have a titanium milled clip that works just fine in and out of the pocket. It does have this PVD coating on it, and I do feel it a little bit going in and out of the pocket, but nothing to really complain about. And you have a little bit to hang on to, but all in all, the clip works just fine in and out of the pocket. Carry profile, it is relatively slim. It's not a giant knife or anything like that, so it carries just fine. In my opinion, for a full-size knife, it's going to carry pretty good considering the length of the knife. It does give you a little lanyard hole in the back, if you're a lanyard fan. Now, a couple other things before we get into the bad. It does give you a good sharpening choil, so you do have a nice plunge grind where the plunge grind starts right there, it ends right there, and they give you a little bit to sharpen out, which is always nice to have. The last one I reviewed, the plunge grind went all the way to the edge. Now, a couple other things. The stop pin winds up landing right there, and then in the open position, it is a good size stop pin. We're going to talk more about that here in just a second. Like I said before, T8 construction, I do like to see that, and it's just a slick looking knife. I also like that. Now, the color combination is also pretty eye-catching, eye-appealing. Now let's talk about a couple bad things, because I do have a couple negative things to say. One, We were talking about the stop pin. It stops right there. So when I close it, and a good size stop pin, but when I'm closing the knife, that's where it stops. It stops right there on that bar. And the detent drops in. The detent ball that's on this liner lock drops in place right there. So having it hit right here, I personally do not like that. Now, I will say, yes, you will get your money's worth out of this. You will get plenty of sharpenings before you'll ever need to cut in a choil. It probably will never happen. However, I just prefer not having your stop pin hit right here under the edge. See that little line right there? That's right where the stop pin hits. So say if I did sharpen off a bunch of steel or chip my tip or get a little nick in my edge and I got to remove a bunch of steel, I'm possibly going to start hitting that area right there. And that's one thing that could be bad, is if I sharpen it out. But the bad thing is I can't put in a new choil if I want to, because, you know, it's in a bad spot, you know, where if I try to cut in a choil, I have to do it in front of there, so I have to leave this steel alone, so I'd have to put the choil right here, and it just makes it difficult. Now, will you ever run into that issue if you have this knife? Probably not, but you never know. I mean, I've had tons of knives that I've chipped the edge on, and I've had to remove a lot of steel in order to make it functional again. So it is what it is. I just don't like having stop pins land under the edge. Put them up higher, make them land down here somewhere, or make an internal stop pin or something else besides making it land directly under the edge. Just a bad spot for a stop pin. Next thing, I wish they would have made a cutout for the lock bar. The lock bar access is not good. You know, you do have to come around to the front and unlock it. Now, the lock bar is nice and soft, so it is pretty easy to disengage. But I just prefer having access from the side. Now, lefty, you're going to be just fine because you come from the opposite side. But yeah, I just wish they had a little cutout right there. That's it. A little bit more access to the lock bar. I would love that. I like access to my lock bar, and in this case, it's not the best. It's lined up perfectly. They chamfered this little edge right here and on the other side, but yeah, I just prefer it to be cut out. Next thing, the edge. The edge could have came sharper. I wish they would not put such a high angle for their edge. I don't know what it is. It's probably 25 degrees per side or something like that. I wish they'd bring it down to about 20 degrees per side, or at least like 22 or something. But also, I think they buffed it or something because it came from the factory pretty slick. And, you know, even though me personally, I don't worry about factory edges. I can resharpen it. It's not a big deal. Other people do. Other people, you know, they like to use their factory edge as long as possible. And in this case, it does not come with a great factory edge. And it's a knife. So I think that's one thing that it could benefit, or that this knife would benefit from, is having a good edge angle. And just a good edge, period, you know, nice and toothy, a nice aggressive edge, not so slick. So, you know, it just seems like it's over polished. Now, like I said, that's an easy fix because you can just resharpen it. But all in all, the knife is a solid knife. It is a good knife. The fidget factor is really good. I mean, it's just an incredibly easy knife to front flip. The arrows are amazing. It does cut relatively good. It'll cut a lot better once the edge bevel is fixed, or, you know, laid back a little bit. Works in and out of the pocket, and it looks good. It is a good looking little knife, and it's very, very affordable. But the knife is amazing in so many ways, and it does feel very refined in lots of ways. But there's one little thing, and I was trying to figure out what it was, that there's something about it that makes it feel budget. Because, you know, just messing with it and using it, it feels like an incredible value. I mean, it really does. But then there was just one little part I just couldn't get over, like that this little part feels budget to me. And I figured out what it was. So right here in the lock bar, and I'm not specifically talking about the access would definitely be an improvement, but something to do with the finishing of the lock bar right here, and the the chamfering right here and maybe the strength of it, because it is, you know, a little bit of a lighter tension lock bar, but something about it does make that particular part just makes it feel a little bit more budget to me. Now, take that away and everything else feels very refined. So it's just that one particular part that tends to make it feel, but you know, it is a very, very affordable knife, so I can't really expect more, but I would really like to see a little bit of a cutout right there to get to it. But, you know, aside from the feeling of the lock bar making it feel possibly a little bit more budget, which is expected because of the price, so that's something you can't, there's nothing you can do. They have to get it, you know, to get it at this price point, you know, what can you do, right? Of course. So, but all in all, man, it is a solid knife. I do like it quite a bit. I think it's a pretty cool knife. I like the design. I like the way it looks. Gorgeous looking knife, and it feels very solid. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.